Iolanthe was the life and soul of fairyland. Why, she wrote all our songs and arranged all our dances. We sing her songs and we trip her measures, but we don't enjoy ourselves.
Think that 25 years elapsed since she was banished. What could she have done to deserve so terrible a punishment?
Something awful. She married a mortal. Oh!
Is it injudicious to marry a mortal?
Injudicious? Why, it strikes at the root of the whole fairy system. By our laws, the fairy who marries a mortal dies.
But Iolanthe didn't die. No! Because your queen, who loved her with a surpassing love, commuted her sentence to penal servitude for life on condition that she left her husband without a word of explanation and never communicated with him again.
And that sentence of penal servitude she is now working out on her head at the bottom of that stream.
Yes, but when I banished her, I gave her all the pleasant places of the earth to dwell in. I'm sure I never intended that she should go and live at the bottom of a stream. It makes me perfectly wretched to think of the discomfort she must have undergone.
Think of the damp, and her chest was always delicate.
And the frogs. I never shall enjoy any peace of mind until I know why Iolanthe went to live among the frogs.
Then why not summon her and ask her?
Why? Because if I set eyes on her, I should forgive her at once.
Then why not forgive her? 25 years. It's a long time.
Think how he loved her.
Loved her? What was your love to mine? Why, she was invaluable to me. Who taught me to curl myself inside a buttercup? Iolanthe. Who taught me to swing upon a cobweb? Iolanthe. Who taught me to dive into a dewdrop, to nestle in a nutshell, to gamble upon gossamer? Iolanthe.
She certainly did surprising things.
Oh, give her back to us, Great Queen. For your sake, if not for ours.
Oh, I should be strong, but I am weak. I should be marble, but I am clay. Her punishment has been heavier than I intended. I did not mean that she should live among the frogs. And, well, it shall be as you wish. It shall be as you wish. Iolanthe, from thy dark exile thou art summoned. Come to our call, come
doesn't even know of his father's existence.
How old is he?
24.
24? And to look at you and think you had a son of 24. But that's one of the advantages of being immortal. Never grow old. Is he pretty?
He's extremely pretty, but he's inclined to be stout.
I see no objection to stoutness in moderation.
And what is he?
He's a shepherd, and he loves Phyllis, a ward in Chancery.
A mere shepherd. And he hath a fairy.
He's a fairy down to the waist, but his legs are mortal.
Dear me.
I have no reason to suppose that I am more curious than other people, but I confess I should like to see a person who is a fairy down to the waist, but whose legs are mortal.
Nothing easier, for here he comes.
Good morrow, good mother. Good mother, good morrow. By some means or other, pray banish your sorrow. With joy beyond telling, my bosom is swelling, so joy in a measure expressive of pleasure. For I'm to be married today, today. Yes, I'm to be married today.
Yes, he's to be married today, today. Yes, he's to be married today.
So the Lord Chancellor has at last allowed you to get married to his beautiful ward, Phyllis.
Not he, indeed. To all my tearful prayers, he answers me, a shepherd lad is no fit helpmate for a ward of Chancery. I stood in court, and there I sang him songs of Arcady, with harmonica accompaniment in vain. At first he seemed amused, so did the bar, but quickly wearing of my song, he bade me get out. A servile usher then led me, still singing, into Chancery Lane. I'll go no more. I'll marry her today, and brave the upshot be what it may. But who are these?
Oh, Struffin, rejoice with me. My queen has pardoned me.
Pardon you, mother. This is good news indeed.
And these ladies are my beloved sisters.
Your sisters, and they are my aunts.
A pleasant piece of news for your bride on her wedding day.
Hush. My bride knows nothing of my fairyhood. I dare not tell her, lest it frighten her. She thinks me mortal and prefers me so.
Your fairyhood doesn't seem to have done you much good.
Much good, my dear aunt. It's the curse of my existence. What's the use of being half a fairy? My body can creep through a keyhole, but what's the good of that when my legs are left kicking behind? I can make myself invisible, down to the waist, but that's of no use when my legs remain exposed to view. My brain is a fairy brain, but from the waist downwards, I'm a gibbering idiot. My upper half is immortal, but my lower half grows older every day, and someday or other must die from old age. What's to become of my upper half when I've buried my lower half? I really don't know.
I see your difficulty, but with a fairy brain, you should seek an intellectual sphere of action. Let me see. I've a borough or two at my disposal. Would you like to go into Parliament?
A fairy member? That would be delightful.
I'm afraid I should do no good there. You see, down to the waist, I'm a conservative of the most determined description. But my legs are a couple of confounded liberals. On a division, they'd be sure to take me into the wrong lobby. You see, they're 2 to 1, which is a strong working majority.
Don't let that distress you. You shall be returned as a liberal conservative, and your legs shall be our peculiar care.
I see your majesty does not do things by halves.
No, we are fairies down to the feet. Fare thee well, attractive stranger. Fare thee well, attractive stranger. Shouldst thou be in doubt or danger, peril or perplexity, call us and we'll come to thee.
And today we are to be made happy forever.
Well, we're to be married.
It's the same thing.
I suppose it is. But, Strephon, I tremble at the step I'm taking. I believe it's penal servitude for life to marry a ward of court without the Lord Chancellor's consent. I shall be of age in 2 years. Don't you think you could wait 2 years?
2 years? Have you ever looked in the mirror?
No, never.
Here. Take a look at that. And tell me if you think it's rational to expect me to wait 2 years.
No, you're quite right. One must be reasonable.
Besides, who knows what can happen in 2 years? Why, you might fall in love with the Lord Chancellor himself by that time.
Yes, he's a clean old gentleman.
As it is, half the House of Lords are sighing at your feet.
The House of Lords are certainly extremely attentive.
Attentive? I should think they were. Why did 5 and 20 liberal peers come down to shoot over your grass plot last autumn? It couldn't have been the sparrows. Why did 5 and 20 conservative peers come to fish in your pond? Don't tell me it was the goldfish. No, no. Delays are dangerous, and if we are to marry, the sooner the better.
Thank you.
blow the trumpets, bang the brasses. Tun, tun, tra, sing, tra, sing, tra, tun, tra, tun, tra, sing, boom, sing, boom. We are peers of highest station, paragons of legislation, pillars of the British nation. Dun, dun, ta-ra, sing, boom, dun, ta-ra, sing, boom. We are peers of highest station,
Constitutional guardian I of pretty young wards and Chancellor, all very agreeable girls, and none are over the age of 21. A pleasant occupation for a rather susceptible Chancellor.
A pleasant occupation for a rather susceptible Chancellor.
What though the compliment implied inflates me with legitimate pride, it nevertheless can't be denied that it has its inconvenient side. For I'm not so old and I'm not so plain, I'm quite prepared to marry again. But there'd be the deuce to pay in the Lords if I fell in love with one of my wards. Which rather tries my temper, for I'm such a susceptible Chancellor.
Which rather tries his temper, for he's such a susceptible Chancellor.
And everyone who'd marry a ward must come to me for my accord, and in my court I sit all day, giving agreeable girls away. One for him, and one for he, and one for you, and one for ye. And one for thou, and one for thee, but never, oh never a one for me. Which is exasperating for a highly susceptible chancellor.
Which is exasperating for a highly susceptible chancellor.
And now, my lords, to the business of the day.
By all means. Phyllis, who is a ward of court, has so powerfully affected your lordships that you have appealed to me in a body to give her to whichever one of you she may think proper to select. And a noble lord has just gone to her cottage to request her immediate attendance. It would be idle to deny that I myself have the misfortune of being singularly attracted by this young person. My regard for her is rapidly undermining my constitution. 3 months ago, I was a stout man. I need say no more. If I could reconcile it with my duty, I should unhesitatingly award her to myself. For I can conscientiously say that I know no man so well fitted to render her exceptionally happy.
Hear, hear.
But such an award would be open to misconstruction. So therefore, at whatever personal inconvenience, I waive my claim.
My lord, I wish to express, on the part of this house, its sincere sympathy with your lordship's most painful position.
Oh, I thank your lordships. The feelings of a Lord Chancellor who is in love with a ward of court are not to be envied. What is his position? Can he give his own consent for his own marriage with his own ward? Can he marry his own ward without his own consent? And if he married his own ward without his own consent, can he commit himself for contempt of his own court? And if he commit himself for contempt of his own court, can he appear by counsel before himself to move for arrest of his own judgment? Ah, my lords, it is indeed painful to have to sit upon a wool's neck, which is stuffed with such thorns as these.
My lords, I have much pleasure in announcing that I have succeeded in inducing the young person to present herself at the bar of this house.
How beautiful, how gentle, how dutiful.
Of all the young ladies I know, this pretty young lady's the fairest. Her lips have the rosiest show, her eyes are the richest and rarest. Her origin's lowly, it's true, but of birth and position I've plenty. I've grammar and spelling for 2, and blood and behavior for 20. Her origin's lowly, it's true. I've grammar and spelling for 2,
Of birth and position is plenty, with blood and behavior for 20.
with birth and position I've plenty, with blood and behavior for 20.
Though the views of the house have diverged on every conceivable motion, all questions of party are merged in a frenzy of love
high rank will never hurt you. The peerage is not destitute of virtue.
Spare not the nobly born with love affected, nor treat with virtuous scorn the well connected. High rank involves no shame, we boast an equal claim with him of humble name to be respected. Blue blood, when virtuous love is sought, my power is not, rotating from the flood, blue blood, ah, blue blood.
When virtuous love is sought, my flowering is not, rotating from the blood, blood.
Spare us the bitter pain of stern denials, nor with low-born disdain augment our trials. Hearts just as pure and fair may beat in Belgrave Square as in the lonely air of Seven Dials. Blue blood, of what avail art thou to serve us now? Rotating from the flood, blue blood, ah, blue blood.
Of what avail art thou to serve us now, rotating from the flood,
Blue blood, ah,
My lords, it may not be, with grief my heart is riven. You waste your time on me. Ah, my heart is given.
Given.
Yes, given.
And who has dared to brave our high displeasure, and thus defy our definite command?
I, young Strickland, find this priceless treasure. Against the world, I claim my darling's hand. A shepherd I,
a shepherd he,
of Arcadine,
of Arcady,
betrothed are we,
betrothed are they,
and mean to be
espoused today. A shepherd he, of Arcady, a shepherd he, of Arcady, betrothed are they, and means to be espoused today. Meet this blow, worse the stab of dagger, though we momentarily stagger in each heart. Prouder innately, let's keep hard, dignified and stately, let's keep hard, dignified and stately, 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 dignified and stately. Oh, our hearts she's badly bruising, in another suit of choosing. Let's pretend it's most amusing. Let's pretend it's most amusing. Ha ha ha!
Now, sir, what excuse have you to offer for having disobeyed an order of the Court of Chancery?
My lord, I know no courts of chancery. I go by nature's acts of parliament. The bees, the breeze, the seas, the rooks, the brooks, the gales, the vales, the fountains and mountains cry, you love this maiden, take her, we command you. 'Tis written heaven by the bright barbed darts that leaps forth into lurid light from each grim thundercloud. The very rain pours forth her sad and sodden sympathy. When coarse nature bids me take my love, shall I reply, nay, for a certain chancellor forbids it? Sir, you are England's Lord High Chancellor, but are you Chancellor of birds and trees, King of the winds and Prince of thunderclouds?
No. It's a very nice point. I'm not sure that I ever met it before. But my difficulty at present is that there's no evidence before the court that chorus nature has interested herself in the matter.
No evidence? You have my word for it. I tell you that she bade me take my love.
Ah, but my good sir, you can't just tell us what she told you. That's not evidence. Now, an affidavit from a thunderstorm or a few words on oath from a heavy shower would meet with all the attention they deserve.
And have you the heart to apply the rules of evidence to a case which bubbles over with poetical emotion?
Distinctly. I have always kept my duty strictly before my eyes, and it is to that fact that I owe my advancement to my present distinguished position. When I went to the bar as a very young man, said I to myself, said I'll work on a new and original plan, said I to myself, said I'll never assume that a rogue or a thief is a gentleman worthy implicit belief, because his attorney has sent me a brief, said I to myself, said Ere I go into court, I will read my brief through, said I to myself, said and I'll never take work I'm unable to do, said I to myself, said my learned profession I never disgrace by taking a fee with a grin on my face when I haven't been there to attend to the case, said I to myself, said I'll never throw dust in a juryman's eye, said I to myself, said or hoodwink a judge who is not overwise, said I to myself, said or assume that the witness is summoned in force in Exchequer, Queen's Bench, Common Pleas, or divorce. Had perjured themselves as a matter of course, said I to myself, said In other professions in which men engage, said I to myself, said the army, the navy, the church, or the stage. Said I to myself, said professional license if carried too far, your chance for promotion might certainly mar, and I fancy the rule might apply to the bar. Said I to myself, said
Oh, Phyllis, Phyllis, to be taken from you just as I was on the point of making you my own. It's too much. It's too much.
My son in tears, and on his wedding day.
My wedding day. Oh, mother, weep with me. For the law is interposed between us, and the Lord Chancellor has separated us forever.
The Lord Chancellor? Oh, if he but knew.
If he but knew what?
No matter. The Lord Chancellor has no power over you. Remember, you are half a fairy. You can defy him. Down to the waist.
Yes, but from the waist downwards, he can commit me to prison for years. Of what avail is it that my body is free if my legs are working out 7 years penal servitude?
True, but remember, take heart. Our queen has promised you her special protection. I'll go to her and lay your peculiar case before her.
My beloved mother, how can I repay the debt that I owe you? the day, and all is dull and gray. To chase the gloom away, on thee I call.
I think I heard him say that on a rainy day, to while the time away on her he'd call.
We think we heard him say that on a rainy day, to while the time away on her he'd call.
Tempest wrecked thy bark, and all is drear and dark. If thou shouldst need me, I'll give thee one. What was that?
I heard the minx remark she'd meet him after dark inside St. James's Park and give him one.
Heard the minx remark, she meets him after dark, inside St. James's Park and give him one.
The prospect's not so bad, my heart's so sore and sad, may very soon be glad as summer sun. Oh, when the sky is dark, and tempest wreck my bark, if he should need an ark, she'll give him one. I'll give him one. I'll give him one.
Oh, shame, this one tremble, ye do not endeavor thy fault to disable, we part and forever. Worshipped him blindly, he worships another.
Attend to me kind to be this lady's my mother.
This lady's what?
This lady's my mother.
This lady's is what?
She says she's his mother.
What means this mirth unseemly that shakes the listening earth?
The joke is good extremely and justifies our mirth.
This gentleman seems with a maid 17 of taking of his dolce far niente. And what does he achieve? For he asks us to believe she's his mother and he's nearly 25.
Recollect yourself, I pray, and be careful what you say, as the ancient Roman said, festina lente. For I really do not see how so young a girl could be the mother of a man of 25.
My lord, of evidence I have no term. She is, has been, my mother from my birth. In babyhood, upon her lap I lay, with infant food, she moistened my clay. Had she withheld the succor she supplied, by hunger quelled your Strephon might have died.
Had that refreshment been denied, indeed our Strephon might have died.
Had that refreshment's been denied, indeed our Strephon might have died.
But as she's not his mother, it appears, why weep these not unnecessary tears? And by what laws should we so joyously rejoice because our Strephon did not die?
righteous and frank that you be full of the only faiths you use. So the richest and frankest of you all, my sorrowful heart shall choose. My son of so bloom of life so rich, as this couple of lords will find one age. In my mirth the taking, waking, breaking, for one of you two, and I don't care which. To you I give my heart so rich.
To which?
I do not care. To you I yield, it is my toast.
To whom?
I'm not aware. I'm yours, you're mine, and you're my church.
She's whose?
You're a peer. I'll be a countess, my lord.
Of what?
I do not care.
Lucky little lady, Strelvin's lovely shady. Rank is the title, Countess is the title. Yes, Countess, Countess, the title, the title. But of what I'm not aware, but of what I'm not aware.
Can I inactive see my fortunes fade? No, no,
Ho ho,
no, no.
ho ho.
Mighty protectress, hasten to my aid.
Nobody knows why you're with her. Why you want us, we don't know, but you summoned us, and so enter on the little fairies to their usual tripping measure. To oblige you, all our care is, tell us, pray, what is your pleasure?
The lady of my love has caught me talking to another.
Oh, my, your Strelvin is a rogue.
I tell her very plainly that the lady is my mother.
Taradiddle, tall maid.
She won't believe my statement and declares we must be parted, because on our career of double dealing I've started. They gives her hand to one of these and leaves the broken hearted.
Taradiddle, tall maid.
A cruel one to separate two lovers from each other.
Oh, why our shirts are rolled?
You've done him an injustice, for the lady is his mother.
Terrible, tall long lane.
That cradle flame is her concern as well as any other. I didn't see her face, but if they fondled one another. And she's but 17, I don't believe it was his mother. Taradiddle.
Tall long lane.
I have often had a use for a thoroughbred excuse of a sudden which is English more repenting. Well, of all I ever heard, this is much the most absurd, for she's 17 and he is 5 and 20.
She's 17 and he's only 5 and 20. Oh, my, your Strelvin is a rogue.
Now listen, pray to me, this paradox will be carried nobody and all quadruplicenti. Her age upon the date of his birth was minus 8. If she's 17 and he is 5 and 20.
She is 17 and he is only 5 and 20. To say she is his mother is in much of it a folly. Oh, my, your Strelvin is a rogue. Perhaps his brain is animal and he's very melancholy. Taradiddle, tall maid. I wouldn't say a word that could be reckoned as injurious, but to find a mother younger than his son is very curious. And that's the kind of mother that is usually mysterious. Taradiddle, tall maid.
Go away, madam, I should say, madam, you display, madam, shocking taste. It is rude, madam, to intrude, madam, with your brood, madam, brazen-faced. You come here, madam, interfere, madam, with a peer, madam, I am one. You're aware, madam, what you dare, madam, so take care, madam, and be gone.
Say, madam, I should say, madam, they display, madam, shocking taste. It is rude, madam, to allude, madam, to your brood, madam, brazen face. We don't fear, madam, and you peer, madam, though my dear, madam, this is one. They will swear, madam, unaware, madam, what they dare, madam, what they do. Here deny these puny mortals, I will not from fear be brought
an influential fairy.
Plague on this vagary, I'm in a nice quandary of hasty tone with dames unknown. I ought to be more chary. It seems that she's a fairy from Anderson's library, and I took her for the proprietor of a ladies' seminary.
For the proprietor of the ladies' seminary.
When next your houses do assemble, you may tremble. Our wrath, when gentlemen offend us, is tremendous. They meet who underrate our calling, doom appalling. Take down our sentence as we speak it, and he shall wreak it.
Oh, spare us!
And what's happened passed away, crooks and pipes and roots of gay, flocks and herds that bleat and blow, into Parliament you shall go.
Into Parliament he shall go, backed by the supreme authority. He'll command a large majority. Into Parliament, 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 he shall go. Into Parliament he shall go. Into Parliament, Parliament, he shall go. Into Parliament he shall go.
In the parliamentary high, liberal or conservative, Whig or Tory, I don't know, but into Parliament you shall go.
Into Parliament he shall go, backed by the supreme authority. He'll command a large majority. Into Parliament, Parliament, he shall go. Into Parliament he shall go. Into Parliament, Parliament, he shall go. Into Parliament he shall go.
Every bill and every measure that may gratify his pleasure, though your fury it arouses, shall be passed by both your houses.
Oh,
You shall sit, if he sees reason, through the grouse and salmon season.
oh,
He shall end the cherished rights
assuming that he's got any. Oh, never nurtured in the lap of luxury, yet I admonish you. I am an intellectual chap, and think of things that would astonish you. I often think it's comical, fa-la-la, fa-la-la, that nature always does contrive, fa-la-la-la, that every boy and every girl who's born into the world alive is either a little liberal or else a little conservative. Fa-la-la, fa-la-la, is either a little liberal or else a little conservative. Fa-la-la. When in that house MPs divide, if they've a brain and cerebellum too, they've got to leave that brain outside and vote just as their leaders tell them to. But then the prospect of a lot of dull MPs in close proximity, or thinking for themselves, is what no man can face with equanimity. Then let's rejoice with loud ballad, ba-la-la, ba-la-la, that nature always does contrive, ba-la-la-la, that every boy and every girl who's born into the world alive is either a little liberal or else a little conservative.
It so happens that if there is an institution in Great Britain which is not susceptible of any improvement at all, it is the House of Peers. When Britain really ruled the waves in good Queen Mercy's time, the House of Peers made no pretense to intellectual eminence or scholarship sublime. Yet Britain won her proudest praise in good Queen Mercy's glorious days. Yet Britain won her proudest praise in good Queen Mercy's glorious days. Yes, Britain won her proudest praise in good Queen Mercy's glorious days. When Wellington thrashed Bonaparte, as every child can tell, the House of Peers throughout the war did nothing in particular and did it very well. Yet Britain set the world ablaze in good King George's glorious days. Yet Britain set the world ablaze in good King George's glorious days. Yes, Britain set the world ablaze in good King George's glorious days. And while the House of Peers withholds its legislative hand, and noble statesmen do not itch to interfere in matters which they do not
protege of yours before it's too late. Think of the mischief you're doing.
But we can't stop him now. Oh, lovely. Oh, why did you go and defy us, you great geese? In vain to us indeed, don't go. Your prayers we do not heed, don't go. So we sigh, and suppose, dear God, I forgiveness shows. Oh no, we're very cross indeed, yes, very cross. Do we sigh, don't suppose, tearful eye forgiveness shows. Oh no, we're very cross indeed, yes, very cross. Don't go. Your disrespectful sneers, don't go. Doing more than indignant tears, don't go. You break our laws, you are our foe. We cry because we hate you so. You know, you very wicked peers, you wicked peers. Don't go. You break our laws, you are our foes. We cry because we hate you so. You know, you very wicked peers, you wicked peers. Don't go.
Our disrespectful sneers, ha ha, not more indignant tears, ha ha. If that's the case, my dears,
Don't go.
we'll go.
Oh, shame! Shame upon you! Is this your fidelity to the laws you are bound to obey? Know ye not that it is death to marry a mortal?
Yes, but it is not death to wish to marry a mortal.
If it were, you'd have to execute us all.
Oh, this is weakness. Subdue it.
We know it is weakness, but the weakness is so strong. We are not all as tough as you are.
Tough? Do you suppose that I am insensible to the effect of manly beauty? Look at that man. Perfect picture. Who are you, sir?
Man! Run Willis! B Company! First Grenadier Girls, man!
You're a very fine fellow, sir.
I am generally admired, ma'am.
I don't quite understand it. Now, here is a man whose physical attributes are simply godlike. That man has a most extraordinary effect upon me. If I yielded to a natural impulse, I should fall down and worship that man. But I mortify this inclination. I wrestle with it, and it lies beneath my feet. That is how I treat my regard for that man. Oh, foolish faith in Cupid cause, his bravery my bosom claws. I disobey our fairy laws, because I fly in realms above, in tendency to fall in love.
younger than yourself.
Phyllis, my darling.
Phyllis, my own.
How dare you? But perhaps you're the two noblemen I'm engaged to?
I am one of them.
I am the other.
Oh, well then, my darling, my own. Well, have you settled which it's to be?
Not altogether. It's a difficult position. It would be hardly delicate to toss up. On the whole, we'd rather leave it to you.
How could it possibly concern me? You are both earls, and you are both rich, and you are both plain.
So we are. At least I am.
So am I.
No.
Oh, I am indeed very plain.
Well, perhaps you are.
There's really nothing to choose between you. If one of you would forego his title and distribute his estates among his Irish tenantry, well, I might see a reason for accepting the other.
Tolloller, are you prepared to make this sacrifice?
No.
Not even to oblige a lady?
No, not even to oblige a lady.
Then the only question is, which of us shall give way to the other? Perhaps on the whole she will be happier with me. Oh no, I may be wrong.
No, I don't think that you are. I really believe she would. But the awkward part of the thing is that if you rob me of the girl of my heart, we must fight. One of us must die. It's a family tradition that I've sworn to respect. It's a painful position, but I have a very strong regard for you, George.
My dear Thomas.
Yes, I'm very fond of you, George. We were boys together. At least, I was. If I were to survive you, my existence would be hopelessly embittered.
Then, dear Thomas, you must not do it. I say it again and again. If it will have this effect upon you, you must not do it. No. If one of us is to destroy the other, let it be me.
No.
Oh, yes, by our boyish friendship, I implore you.
Well, be it so, but no, I cannot consent to an act which would crush you with unavailing remorse.
But I would not do so. I should be very sad at first. Oh, who would not be? But it would wear off. I like you very much, but not, perhaps, as much as you like me.
Ah, George, you're a noble fellow, but that telltale tear betrays you. No, George, you're very fond of me. I cannot consent to give you a week's uneasiness on my account.
Oh, Thomas, it would not last a week. Remember, you leave the House of Lords. On your demise, I shall take your place. Oh, Thomas, it would not last a day.
Now, I do hope you're not going to fight for me, because it really isn't worthwhile.
No, I don't believe it is.
Nor I. The sacred ties of friendship are paramount.
Though perhaps it may incur your blame, the things are few I would not do in friendship's name.
And I may say I think the same, not even love should rank above true friendship.
lies heavy on my chest and weaves itself into my midnight slumbers. When you're lying awake with a dismal headache and repose is tabooed by anxiety, I conceive you may use any language you choose to indulge in without impropriety. For your brain is on fire, the bedclothes conspire of usual slumber to plunder you. Then your counterpane goes and uncovers your toes, and the sheet slips demurely from under you. Then the blanket tickles you feel like McPickle so terribly chockers the pricking, and you're haunting your cross and you tumble and toss till there's nothing twixt you and the ticking. Then the bedclothes all creep to the ground in a heap and you pick them all up in a tangle. Then your pillow resigns and politely declines to remain at its usual angle. Will you get some repose in the form of a doze with hot eyeballs and head ever aching? But your slumbering teems with such horrible dreams that you very much better be waking. For your dream you are crossing the channel and tossing about in a steamer from Harwich, which is something between a large bathing machine and a very small second-class carriage. And you're giving a treat, penny ice and cold meat, to a party of friends and relations. They're a ravenous horde, and they all came on board at some square in South Kensington Station. And bound on that journey you find your return to the stars that morning from Devon. He's a bit undersized, and you don't feel surprised when they tell you he's only 11. Well, you're driving like mad with the singular lad. By the by, the ship's now a four-wheeler. And you're playing ground games, and he calls you bad names when he tells you that tie's paid the dealer. Well, this you can't stand, so you throw up your hand, and you find you're as cold as an icicle. In your shirt and your socks, and like some little clocks crossing Salisbury Plain on a bicycle. And he and the crew are on bicycles too, which they somehow or other invested in. And he's selling the tires on the particular of a company he's interested in. It's a scheme of devices to get at low prices all goods from cow pictures to cables, which tickled the sailors by treating retailers as though they were all vegetables. You get him that's faithful to plant a small tradesman first take off his roots from the boot tree, and his legs will take root and his fingers will shoot and a blossom will bud like a fruit tree. From the greengrocer tree you get grapes and green pea, cauliflower, pineapple, and cranberry, while the pastry could plant cherry, cranberry, grand apple, and 3 quarters of batteries. The shares are a penny and ever so many are taken by Rothschild and Baring, and just as if you are allotted to you, you awake with a shudder despairing. You're a regular wreck with a crick in your neck and a wonder you snore for your head's on the floor and there's needles and pins from your soles to your shins. Your flesh is a creep for your love like to sleep. You scramble your toes and a fly in your nose. Some fluff in your lung and a feverish tongue with thirst and intense and a general sense that you have to sleep. But the darkness is past and it's daylight at last and the night has been long. Ditto, ditto, my song. And thank goodness they're both of them over. My lords, it is seldom that a Lord Chancellor has reason to envy the position of another, but I am free to confess that I would rather be 2 earls engaged to Phyllis than any other half-dozen noblemen upon the face of the globe.
Yes, it's an enviable position when you're the only one.
Ah, yes, no doubt, most enviable. At the same time, seeing you thus, we naturally say to ourselves, this is very sad. His lordship is constitutionally as blithe as a bird. He twirls upon the bench like a thing of song and gladness. His series of judgments in F sharp, given on Dante in 6/8 time, are among the most remarkable effects ever produced in a court of chancery. He is, perhaps, the only living instance of a judge whose decrees have received the honor of a double encore. How could we do that which would deprive the court of chancery of one of its most attractive features?
I feel the force of your remarks, but I am here in 2 capacities, and they clash, my lord, they clash. I deeply grieve to say that in declining to entertain my last application to myself, I presume to address myself in terms which render it impossible for me to ever apply to myself again. It was a most painful scene, my lord, most painful.
This is what it is to have 2 capacities. Let us be thankful that we are persons of no capacity whatever.
Come, come. You are a very just and kindly gentleman, and you need have no hesitation in approaching yourself, so that you do so respectfully and with a proper show of deference.
Do you really think so?
I do.
Well, I will nerve myself to another effort, and if that fails, I resign myself to my fate.
Hustle your horse and don't say die. He who shines at such a prize is not worth a man of fame. Be so kind to bear in mind, faint heart never won fair lady. Never, never, never faint heart never won fair lady. While the sun shines, make your hay. Where a whip is, there's a way. Here the lion in his lair, none but the brave deserve the fair. I'll take heart and make a start, though I fear the prospect shade. March I spend to gain my end. Faint heart never won fair lady. Never, never, never faint heart never won fair lady. Nothing venture, nothing win. Blood is thick, but water's thin. In for a penny, in for a pound, it's love that makes the world go round. Nothing venture, nothing win. Blood is thick, but water's thin. In for a penny, in for a pound, it's love that makes the world go round.
I suppose one ought to enjoy oneself in Parliament when one leads both parties as I do. But I'm miserable. Poor broken-hearted fool that I am. Oh, Phyllis. Phyllis.
Yes?
Phyllis. But I suppose I should say, my lady, I have not yet been informed which title your ladyship has pleased to select.
Well, I haven't quite decided. You see, I have no mother to advise me.
No, I have.
Yes, a young mother.
Not very. A couple centuries or so.
Oh, she wears well.
She does. She's a fairy.
I beg your pardon, of what?
Oh, I've no longer any reason to conceal the fact. She's a fairy.
A fairy. Well, that would account for a good many things. Then I suppose you're a fairy.
I'm half a fairy.
Which half?
The upper half, down to the waistcoat.
Dear me, there's nothing to show it.
Don't do that.
Well, why didn't you tell me this before?
I thought you'd take a dislike to me, but as it's all off, you may as well know the truth. I'm only half immortal.
But I'd rather have half a mortal I do love than half a dozen I don't.
No, I think not. Go to your half dozen.
It's only two, and I hate them. Please forgive me.
I don't think I ought to. Besides, all sorts of difficulties will arise. You know, my grandmother looks quite as young as my mother. So do all my aunts.
I quite understand. Whenever I see you kissing a very young lady, I shall know it's an elderly relative.
You will. Then, Phyllis, I think we shall be very happy.
We won't be long,
No, we might change our minds. We'll get married first.
and change our minds afterwards.
That's the usual course. If we're weak enough to tarry ere we marry, you and I, of the feeling I inspire, you may tire by and by. For beers with flowing coffers press their offers, that is why I'm sure we should not tarry ere we marry, you and I.
If by chance we should be parted, broken hearted, people. But the Lord Chancellor,
I forgot him. Mother, none can resist your fairy eloquence. You will go to him and plead for us?
No, impossible.
But our happiness, our very lives depend upon our obtaining his consent.
Madam, you cannot refuse to do this.
You know not what to ask. The Lord Chancellor is my husband.
Your husband?
My husband and your father.
Well, then our course is plain. Upon learning that Strephon is his son, all objections to our marriage will be at once removed.
He must never know. He believes me to have died childless. And dearly as I love him, I am bound under penalty of death not to undeceive him. But see, he comes, quick.
Victory! Victory! Success has crowned my efforts, and I may consider myself engaged to Phyllis. At first, I wouldn't hear it. Why, it was out of the question. But I took heart. I pointed out to myself that I was no stranger to myself. That, in point of fact, I had been personally acquainted with myself for some years. This had its effect. I admitted that I had observed my professional advancement with considerable interest, and I handsomely added that I yielded to no one in admiration for my private and professional virtue. This was a great point gained. I then endeavored to work upon my feelings. Conceive my joy when I distinctly perceived a tear glistening in my own eye. Eventually, after a severe struggle with myself, I reluctantly, most reluctantly, consented.
My lord, a suppliant at your feet I kneel. Listen to a mother's fond appeal. Hear me tonight, I come in urgent need. 'Tis for my son,
And pretty freely, too. You have all incurred death, but I can't slaughter the whole company, and yet the law is clear. Every fairy must die that marries a mortal.
Allow me, as an old equity draftsman, to make a suggestion. The subtleties of the legal mind are equal to the emergency. The thing is quite simple. The insertion of a single word will do it. Let it stand that every fairy must die who doesn't marry a mortal. And there you are, out of your difficulty at once.
We like your humor. Very well. Private Willis. To save my life, it is necessary that I marry at once. How should you like to be a fairy guardsman?
Well, ma'am, I don't think much of a soldier who would not ill-convenience himself to send a female in distress.
You are a brave fellow. You're a fairy from this moment. And you, my lords, how say you? Will you join our ranks?
Well, knowledge appears to be recruited entirely for presence of intelligence. I really don't see what use we are down here. Do you, Tolloller?
None whatever.
Good. Then away we go to fairyland. Soon as we may, off and away, we'll go bent our journey, very happy we'll be. As you can see, everyone is now a fairy. Everyone is now a fairy. As a general rule we know, two strings go to every bow. Make up your mind, the grief will bring, if it's to bow to every string.
Oh, as a general rule we know, two strings go to every bow. Make up your mind, the grief will bring, if you to bow to every string.
Up in the sky, ever so high, pleasures come in endless series. We will arrange happy exchange, house of peers for house of peeries.
Peeries, 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 house of peers for house of peeries. Up in the air, sky high, free from wars in Chancellor. I will be surely happier for I'm such a susceptible Chancellor. Up in the air,